Imagine a case where love, belief, and obsession intertwine in one of the most horrifying ways imaginable. In 2019, two people, Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, became household names, not for their romance, but for a chilling series of events that ended in murder and unimaginable loss. This story takes place in Rexburg, Idaho, a quiet, close-knit town surrounded by breathtaking landscapes and serene farmland. Nestled between the Rocky Mountains and lush green fields, Rexburg was the kind of place where residents felt safe, where life moved at a gentle pace, and where community and faith were deeply ingrained in daily life. But beneath this peaceful exterior, a dark storm was brewing. Chad and Lori's story would reveal the dangers of extreme beliefs that lurked in this seemingly idyllic town, and would expose the terrifying consequences of unchecked obsession. What unfolded in Rexburg shattered not only the lives of those involved, but left an indelible scar on the community and everyone who followed this tragic tale. Lori Vallow was a former beauty queen, a mother of three, and someone who appeared to live a perfectly normal suburban life. Known for her charm and beauty, Lori had been married 4 times before meeting Chad. Though she seemed like an everyday mom and community member, Lori was drawn to darker, mysterious beliefs that would eventually lead her down a path of unimaginable horror. Chad Daybell, a self-proclaimed spiritual leader and author of apocalyptic books, seemed like an unassuming man on the outside. But Chad's writings hinted at something much darker. A former gravedigger turned author, Chad believed he had access to divine visions, which he claimed allowed him to see beyond the veil of mortality. He had written extensively on preparing for the end times and was obsessed with the idea of the afterlife. Through his books and teachings, Chad amassed a following of individuals who shared his apocalyptic beliefs. Lori was one of these followers, captivated by his teachings, and soon the two would begin a relationship that spiraled into a deadly obsession. Chad and Lori's paths first crossed at a religious conference in 2018, where Chad's sermons on the end times and apocalyptic visions captivated Lori. Chad, who was married at the time to his wife of nearly 30 years, Tylee Daybell, quickly became enchanted with Lori, who was equally drawn to his intense beliefs. Lori, already immersed in similar teachings, found in Chad a spiritual partner who not only shared her ideas about the afterlife, but took them to new extremes. As the two became inseparable, their bond grew into a toxic blend of romance, fanaticism, and zealotry. They began to see themselves as chosen ones with a divine mission to prepare for the apocalypse and rid the world of dark spirits. Their beliefs took on a dangerous edge, as Chad and Lori developed an us versus them mentality, labeling people as either light or dark spirits. Shockingly, Lori's 2 children, 17-year-old Tylee Ryan and 7-year-old JJ Vallow, were eventually categorized as dark spirits in their eyes, setting the stage for a terrifying series of events. In early October 2019, mere weeks after Chad's wife, Tammy, died under suspicious circumstances.
New police recordings explain what happened in the weeks following Tammy Daybell's death. Fox 13's Lauren Steinberg. Lauren.
Yeah, Kelly and Bob, we've told you how Tammy Daybell passed away in Idaho, was buried here in Utah in Springville tonight. These recordings showed the surprising thing her family requested.
Chad and Lori hastily married in Hawaii. The quick marriage raised eyebrows, as Tammy's death was initially ruled natural, but was later reinvestigated when the couple came under police scrutiny. Tammy's death, along with the hurried nature of Chad and Lori's union, painted a disturbing picture of a couple willing to remove anyone who stood in the way of their mission. Not long after the wedding, Lori's children vanished without a trace. 17-year-old Tylee Ryan, Lori's daughter from a previous marriage, was a bright-spirited teenager who was fiercely protective of her younger brother, 7-year-old JJ Vallow. JJ, who was adopted and had special needs, shared a close bond with his sister. She looked out for him, and the two were inseparable. Friends and family began to worry when Tylee and JJ were no longer seen in public. Lori's explanations were inconsistent, leaving those who cared about the children with a growing sense of dread. What seemed like a perfect match between Chad and Lori, a couple united in faith and purpose, was now laced with secrets, lies, and a chilling disregard for anyone they deemed dark. In a matter of months, the relationship that began with shared beliefs had spiraled into tragedy. The authorities were eventually called to investigate, spurred by JJ's grandparents, who hadn't heard from their grandson in weeks. The investigation into the children's whereabouts soon took on a sense of urgency, and authorities issued an alert for Tylee and JJ. But despite their efforts, Lori and Chad were evasive, refusing to cooperate with the police, or provide any clear information about the children's location. As investigators dug deeper into the case, they uncovered a disturbing pattern of sudden, mysterious deaths surrounding Chad and Lori. In July 2019, Charles Vallow, Lori's fourth husband, was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Alex claimed it was an act of self-defense after an argument, and authorities initially ruled it as justified. But soon after, Charles's family members began to suspect foul play, particularly as Lori quickly moved on from his death. Shortly after Charles's death, Tylee Daybell, Chad's wife of nearly 30 years, also died under suspicious circumstances. Tammy was a healthy 49-year-old woman, but Chad claimed she had died in her sleep, attributing it to natural causes. Her death initially raised no red flags, and Chad declined an autopsy, citing religious beliefs. However, within weeks of Tammy's passing, Chad and Lori were married in Hawaii, seemingly indifferent to the recent tragedies. Their swift union raised alarm among friends and family, and authorities began to question whether Tammy's death was indeed natural. The mysterious deaths didn't end there. Lori's brother, Alex Cox, also died suddenly in December 2019, reportedly from blood clots. The series of deaths surrounding Chad and Lori painted a dark picture of individuals who appeared to eliminate anyone who stood in the way of their divine mission. As authorities continued their investigation into the whereabouts of Tylee and JJ, they executed a search warrant at Chad Daybell's property in Rexburg, Idaho. On June 9, 2020, they made a heartbreaking discovery. Buried in a shallow grave on the property, they found the remains of both Tylee and JJ. The details of their deaths were chilling. Tylee's body had been dismembered and burned, and JJ's remains were found wrapped in plastic and bound with duct tape.
Right now on 12 News at 6, we start with breaking new details on the deaths of two children with Valley ties. The bodies of JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan were found last week, buried in their stepfather's backyard. Tonight, new documents reveal what led investigators to search the property.
Investigators say they found the children's remains in two different spots, one of them in a pet cemetery by a fire pit. And according to the documents, at least one of the bodies was dismembered. Police say
the discovery left investigators, family, and the entire community horrified, unable to comprehend the brutality of the crime. Tylee and JJ's tragic fates confirmed the suspicions that had haunted their family for months, and Chad was arrested shortly after. The revelations surrounding the children's deaths shocked the nation, and the case became a lightning rod for discussions on religious extremism, manipulation, and the destructive power of delusional beliefs. Lori, who was already in custody on charges of desertion, was now facing charges related to the murders of her own children. As Chad and Lori's cases progressed, prosecutors began to unveil the disturbing evidence that linked them to a string of murders, including the death of Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell. Investigators revisited Tammy's death in October 2019. Originally ruled as natural causes, Tammy was known to be a healthy, active woman, making her sudden passing deeply suspicious. Just weeks after Tammy's death, Chad and Lori married hastily in Hawaii, which prompted authorities to re-examine the circumstances surrounding her death. During the investigation, authorities exhumed Tammy's body and conducted an autopsy, revealing signs of asphyxiation. This new evidence pointed to foul play, leading to the conclusion that Tammy's death was far from accidental. The motive for Tammy's murder became clear as Chad and Lori's texts and messages were revealed in court. Chad had viewed his wife as an obstacle to his future with Lori, and the couple believed Tammy's death was necessary for their divine mission to proceed. Perhaps one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence came from Lori's recorded conversations, where she expressed that her children were possessed and referred to them as zombies. Investigators argued that Chad and Lori had created a twisted narrative in which their actions, no matter how horrific, were justified by their religious beliefs. Family members testified to the changes they saw in Lori after she met Chad, describing her as a loving mother who had become increasingly detached and obsessed with Chad's teachings. They described how she had abandoned her responsibilities as a mother and had grown callous, disregarding anyone who questioned her new relationship or beliefs. The trial that followed was a media spectacle, one of the most widely covered cases in Idaho's history. Lori initially faced a mental competency evaluation and was deemed unfit to stand trial for a period, delaying proceedings until 2022. The courtroom was a somber place as jurors listened to chilling evidence of Chad and Lori's beliefs, including text messages, audio recordings, and journal entries outlining their perceived roles as warriors in a cosmic battle against evil. Family members of Tylee, JJ, Tammy, and Charles attended the trial, their faces etched with grief as the gruesome details were laid bare. The prosecution presented a chilling portrait of a couple consumed by radical beliefs, willing to sacrifice even their own children for their twisted agenda. They argued that Chad and Lori's visions of a new world justified murder in their minds, with friends and family testifying that Lori's behavior had changed dramatically after meeting Chad. Lori's defense argued that she was manipulated by Chad, while Chad's legal team insisted his religious beliefs had been exaggerated, but the evidence was overwhelming, pointing to the couple's direct involvement in the horrific events. In 2024, the court's verdict was met with mixed emotions. Lori Vallow Daybell received a life sentence without the possibility of parole for her role in the murders of Tylee, JJ, and conspiracy charges related to Tammy and Charles. The sentence provided a sense of closure for the victims' families, but the knowledge of what Lori had done and why left many still grappling with the extent of her transformation under Chad's influence. Chad's sentencing, however, took a more severe turn. An Idaho jury unanimously agreed that the heinous nature of his actions warranted the death penalty. On June 1, 2024, Chad Daybell was sentenced to death, marking a rare decision in Idaho's judicial history. He showed no emotion as the sentence was handed down, but the courtroom felt the weight of justice for the lives lost. The sentencing provided a momentary sense of relief to the families and the community, though many noted that Chad's sentence could be subject to years of appeals. The verdicts marked the end of an agonizing chapter for the people of Rexburg and for the families left in the wake of Chad and Lori's violence. The town, once a peaceful, family-centered place, had become the site of one of the most shocking murder cases in recent memory. Vigils were held, memorials created, and flowers placed near the site of the children's final resting place, serving as symbols of the lives taken far too soon. Chad and Lori's case has become a national example of the dangers of extremism, prompting discussions about mental health, influence, and the ways in which individuals can be manipulated by belief systems taken to violent extremes. Law enforcement agencies have increased training and awareness for identifying similar cases, focusing on child welfare when investigating missing persons reports. The trial of Chad and Lori Vallow Daybell has come to a close, but the questions they leave behind linger. How far can someone be driven under the guise of belief? And what happens when a mission becomes a mask for murder? The tragic fates of Tylee, JJ, Tammy, and Charles serve as sobering reminders of the darkness that can emerge even in places that seem safe and serene, forever haunting the community of Rexburg.